Hello, welcome back to my channel. I am Natalie. I'm the mother of 8 children going on 9, and I'm here today to discuss with you a little bit more about how we homeschool our large family. Keep in mind, these are the things that we've learned. This is what we do with our family, and that's going to look different for your family. Today I'm going to be sharing with you more about Forms 3 and 4, although I'm not going to touch on Form 4 as much just because we haven't graduated a child yet. Our oldest is just now going to be a junior in high school this year, so she's going into 11th grade. But I will share a little bit about some of the things that we have learned so far. So I'm going to be focusing in this video a little bit more about the teen years and some of the struggles that we've faced ourselves and challenges that I think are common to this age, and some common pitfalls and how we've dealt with them. We have seen repeated patterns, and that has given us some insight into behavior and reasons behind some things that has helped clarify things for us as parents and how to handle and deal and cope with this season. I really think this is a beautiful, amazing season in a child's life to witness them blossoming into an adult, which is what's really going on during this time period. And we get to be a part of it. We get to be a part of enriching their lives during this time and making the transition for them as easy as possible. So their elementary years were really spent learning about the what about their education, what things do, learning about people and places and the world around them. And then as they enter into these upper forms, Form 3 and Form 4, we're going to be digging down a little bit more into the how and then the why, and asking questions and finding the answer to those questions, which is great because that's exactly what children in this age want to do. They're full of questions and ideas and opinions. Sometimes it can feel like they bounce between apathy and really strong opinions about things during this season. Then as we transition into the 4th form in high school, they're going to be asking more of those so what questions. So what do I think about this? What is the author trying to say to me, and what is my view on that? What does the Bible say? And their context in God's world and who they are as a person. These are really big questions, and they're being asked in a child's own mind whether they know it or not during this season. Sometimes this can seem like a challenge, like a child is challenging us and pushing back. But these questions that are coming up in their own mind is a developmental process that happens where they are trying to find answers to who they are. They're trying to find their own voice, their own place, and their own context in God's story for their life. The stage is really about learning how to ask the right questions and find those answers, getting a really good solid biblical grounding so that the child knows exactly where to go and their objective standards that they believe for those answers that they are digging and searching for. And questions that come up as they're reading content that might be new to them, asking questions of the author and finding out what their perspective of those answers might be. Children will likely have gaps in their education. It's inevitable because we as homeschooling parents cannot cover every single base that might come up in their future. I think no matter how diligent a parent is, a child might say, well, you didn't read to me as much even though maybe you really nailed it in math, or I wish you would have done more grammar even though you read to them all the time. So we just have to keep that in mind, that we are not meant to be the be-all for our children. We can't teach them everything, and yet for us, our goal is really to give our children as many tools in their tool belts. That's what we tell them, because we don't know what God has for them. We don't know what He is going to go on and call them to. So we just want to equip them with the skills that we have and with whatever resources that we can give them. But we know that will just be limited naturally. We do not know everything. We do not have all the skills, nor do we even have the availability and time to give them other resources that we would even love to give them. And so that's just something that we need to be humbled about and accept that God has a bigger plan than our plan for our children's life, and have peace and rest in that, knowing that He will continue to educate our children as they enter into adulthood. Some of our priorities and focus during this form, we want to encourage the curiosity and the wonder and the question asking, because if they love to learn, they will go on to continue putting more and more tools in their belt, and they will have open hearts and open minds to learn more about God and His people and the world around them. We like to tell our children that We are putting stones in their pocket that they're going to reach into someday and realize they are precious gems. It might feel like they got a big old pocket full of stones right now, but those stones, they will find out later, are going to be very valuable in their life. And we just encourage them to trust us and to trust God's plan, that these are necessary and good things for them to have and to be equipped with. In the third form, I would say it is primarily about honing the skills necessary to go on and thrive in the fourth form. They are going to apply technical grounding to some of what they learned in the first two forms, and they're going to dig in and really learn quality skills to take into their research level that happens more in the upper part of Form 3 and then into Form 4. So schoolwork can feel more challenging during this time. Their math gets more challenging, their writing gets more challenging, they have to think more. Naturally, this is happening during this time period in a child's life usually anyway, but because of that, they're wrestling through their own questions, and now they're having to wrestle through questions with school and with their parents, and it can be overwhelming, and so it's good that we keep that in mind as we go through this time with them. Another focus in both of these forms is still continuing to teach them diligent habits. And the primary way that we have to do that is accountability during the season. They're going to be mostly independent by now, and maybe at the bottom of the form, they need a little bit more accountability. They might need us helping them along, holding their hand just a little bit in some of their subjects, but we're letting the reins go slowly. That's what we're doing in education, is letting out the reins gradually. And so as they come to the end of this form and enter into Form 4, they really should be completely independently learning with us holding them accountable. And I know for us in particular, accountability is really important for our kids. If they know that mom's going to check back over their work or ask them questions about it, it motivates them to do well. If they have a teacher expecting an assignment from them, it motivates them to get that assignment done in a timely fashion. If they have other friends in a class that are going to hear their writing, it motivates them to do well and to seek to excel. So having these things in their life that encourages them in their diligence, encourages them in their good study habits, this is really important for this season, because just like any other season, our default is to slide into laziness. We've seen this to be true with our own children, and that time period of lesson will get longer and longer and longer. But at the beginning, it does not start out with a 1 hour lesson. Even at the bottom of Form 3, we are still about 20-minute lessons. And then it will progress more and more. Another priority and focus for us during this time is still maintaining good relationships with our students, between us as the parent teacher and them as the students. And this can be an especially challenging time for this, because the child is seeking to ask questions and find answers for themselves. It can seem like they're pushing back, and they do push back a little bit with their school. They want to know all of a sudden why they need to read this book. Why do they need to learn this math formula? Why do they need to learn this harder, more difficult grammar? You know, all these new technical skills might be challenged because they actually are looking for answers. And even when you give them the answer and they don't accept it, the best thing we found is to just firmly hold our ground, be gentle and patient, and not take it personally. I think especially for we mothers, we can take everything personally and feel hurt by the challenge, feel hurt by the question. And if we just see it for what it is and draw the line and say, this is what I'm requiring of you because I know you can do it, and hold firmly to that, the child will eventually accept that, and then they'll be able to go on and excel. Now, if you're entering this form and maybe feeling like the rails weren't quite laid down as well as you anticipated in those primary forms, that maybe your child is having a hard time focusing, or they're having a hard time with diligent study habits and taking a long time to get their work done, I would just really encourage you to go back to those same principles that I talked about in the previous videos, that we want to lower the standard until the child can reach that standard with diligence, excellence, and willingness. It seems counterintuitive at the time. It really can. Like, why would I give a lazy child less work? what you want to show them is what they are capable of doing well. I think a lot of children can push back because they think they can't do something well, or they can't do it at all, and they don't want to do it unless they can do it well. And if you really look at that, that's not really a laziness problem. Sometimes it is a laziness problem. But either way, we have really found it to be fruitful and effective if we lower the standard of time or quantity and ask the child to just do this much then, to the assignment, and to do it well. And what that does is it shows them what they can do well. And usually it raises the child's confidence in their own capabilities enough that they will raise the standard themselves. They will come back and say, "No, it's fine, Mom. I ended up just reading the whole chapter anyway, even though they balked the beginning." And if I say, "All right, read me 2 pages and come give me," or 1 page or 1 paragraph then, and come give me a good quality narration, or tell me your favorite part, they come back to me usually with more confidence. This is a transitory period, just like toddlers. Needing our help. They need us to hold their hand and to show them and to teach them. And so I've really found it to be helpful to just realize that even though we've done a lot of work training them during this season, there's new things that we are going to have to teach them that might feel like very repetitive. It might feel like we just spent all their first part of their childhood teaching them, and how to be respectful, how to obey, and all of a sudden they're resisting it and they're pushing back. But it's how their mind is learning how to work through logic and reasoning why they do things, and it's just what happens. It's just a natural process. The things I've learned during this season is that our children don't actually recognize their own maybe expressions as being disrespectful or tone, and we actually have to teach them and show them. They might do an eye roll or a huff or a slump, whatever, and not realize how disrespectful that looks. I don't know why, it just doesn't click in their brain. And so if we don't take it personally and we just clearly state what they just did and how it communicated disrespect to us or disobedience to us, and how they should have responded to what we just asked them or requested of them, usually a child is open-minded to that. If we are jumping on their backs and getting very defensive, taking everything personally, when the child actually doesn't even know what they just did that's making you respond that way, it can have a negative cycle that you end up spinning into, because then they feel threatened and they feel accused and judged wrongly. And so it's really important to just remember this is a time of training. Just like when they're young toddlers, they need to be trained how to do things. We have to hold their hand as they're learning how to walk until they can take those steps on their own. And teens need that same assistance. They just need to be shown the way to communicate our point without being defensive, the way to speak in a way that is respectful and loving. We can model this for them. We can demonstrate with grace and love for them, and we can be firm and clear with our expectations and what we know to be disrespect and disobedience, so that it's clear for them, and when that boundary is crossed, they know the consequence of that. If we're just willy-nilly all over the map and our children have blow-ups and we just blow up right back, we won't be effective in our parenting during this season. We want to really hone in on engaging with them and training them and teaching them. This can be a challenge because it is a lot of work, but it doesn't have to be a challenge because you feel frustration and disconnect with your child. It can be a challenge just in the aspect where there's a lot of work involved, a lot of intentionality, and a lot of engagement needed on our parts as parents. But we need to see that this is a very fruitful time if we are planting good seeds in this ground, that the child has still an open mind before they enter into adulthood. We need to really see this as a wonderful opportunity to instill objective truth and love and grace in their lives and train them how to communicate like an adult. That's what they're learning. When they say something that sounds disrespectful or rude to a sibling, or just so many questions it seems belligerent, we just need to point them to what they can say, ask them what they're trying to communicate, repeat back to them what we think they just said. Okay, so you mean you're trying to say such, am I right? And then they say yes. Okay, well, how you can communicate that to mommy more respectfully is, and give them an example and have them practice it. This is exactly what I do with my toddlers and preschoolers all day long. Okay, you're trying to say this to mommy, right? I don't deal with this as much up until this point. They kind of get it, and then all of a sudden, I don't know what clicks in their mind. It's something physiological that shifts, and all of a sudden they have to be trained. And I think the difference is you're launching them now, not to teach them what children say, but what adults say, and how to communicate like an adult. I just want to say another word on teenagers. Sometimes there's just unexplainable angst, especially in boys. And for no reason that is clear, they just can't do their math lesson that day. And they want to throw their book across the room and scribble their page. There's just days like that. And we really try to encourage them to find some kind of physical release, to go take a run, to go listen to some music that they enjoy and do a hobby or a craft that they also enjoy, because they need to switch gears. They need to take their mind off of the trajectory that they're heading down and get a restart and a refresh. We do not try to have them push through and address that conflict in the moment. We try to really get them to calm down in some other way or have an outlet for that energy. If we do that, if we just close the book and say, okay, I think you need to have a snack and go outside for a little while and we'll circle back around later. Sometimes the child comes back and is like, I don't know what that was about, Mom. It's like, I don't either, but I forgive you. No, we're sorry, Mom, I blew up. I just really have found it to be effective to not try to push through when that kind of angst is there and present, to not try to solve the attitude in that moment, because they're not in the mind frame to solve it themselves. They can't think rationally and logically with that much emotional angst going on. Once they've calmed down is a very good time to address, why do you think that you responded that way? Did you get any insight while you were on your run? Did mommy do anything that offended you? Were you feeling, did I hurt your feelings in any way? Just asking a few questions and seeing if they have come to any conclusions, and sometimes they don't have any. They're just having an off day, like we all do. We just need to be mindful not to badger them, take offense, and take things personally. I think those are like top things for parenting teens. If you get anything out of this, just don't take it personal. Let God do his work in their heart and just teach and train them faithfully, and don't take it personally. We do begin a few new things. One of the things that we begin is more written narrations. Our child will do at least one written narration a day. By the end of Form 3, at the beginning, it's more like a few times a week. And so we want them to be doing at least one written narration. And then we go back over once a week. We take their favorite written narration. Maybe it's because it was from their favorite book. And we go back through and we do a self-edit. So they go through and they correct the punctuation and the spelling, anything maybe that wasn't worded right. And what this does is it gives them a little bit of practice in the grammar that they've been learning. And another thing that we begin that also helps hone those good writing skills is dictation. I'll just speak to that a little bit because that is something I haven't addressed before. So dictation is a wonderful tool to assess how your child is doing with their language arts and grammar skills. You give them a quality passage that you will read aloud to them, and then they are going to, you read it aloud slowly, and they write down what you read. And hopefully with the proper punctuation, grammar, spelling. They solidify their spelling, their vocabulary. They have to think through all of the capitalization and punctuation rules. And the more that we do this regularly, the more I see our children really doing well in that. I think Charlotte Mason recommends beginning dictation much, much earlier. I don't have time, to be honest. I'm teaching reading, I'm teaching writing, I'm teaching math, and I don't have time in the early forms to be focusing on that many children doing dictation. And so I wait a little bit until they have a better undergirding of grammar until we begin dictation. And to be honest, this changes from year to year. Sometimes there's just years it just falls through the cracks and it doesn't happen as much. And there's other years we pick it back up and we do it consistently and regularly. Like last year we didn't do it at all because I had a beginning reader, a sort of launching reader, and a struggling reader. And so I had to spend most of my time focused on school with those kiddos, plus a toddler and a preschooler. And so it was just not something that I had time for in my schedule. But when that margin is there, we definitely try to focus on it because we found so many benefits from it. And another thing we do is a self-edit once a week. When it comes to reading, our children are now doing a longer period of time for reading. They're doing a full chapter if they can do that in about 15 to 20 minutes. Sometimes it's less. Sometimes we have to start at 10 minutes and they go ahead and advance as that's comfortable and they can come back and narrate to me. I have them read for a longer period of time, but usually not more than 15 minutes at a time until they're at the end, when they're in 8th grade, they read as much as they need to finish a chapter of a book that we are working through, unless it's a really long book. So they average about 20 minutes to 30 minutes by the end of Form 3, and then in Form 4, obviously, they're going on to much longer periods of time in their lessons. Still like them to do as many oral narrations as they can fit in during the day because I only require one written narration. I do prefer whatever other oral narrations of their individualized readings that they can do. And then as they orally narrate back to me, I begin during Form 3 to ask them some more questions, some like how questions and why questions, just to get their mind thinking through that. I'm going to get into some particulars of the curriculum now that we've used in the past. Keep in mind that this varies each year depending on what time frame we have available, what we have offered with our co-op in particular that year, and how our schedule is looking as far as new baby, toddler, all that kind of stuff. Another subject though I do want to mention real quick that will be new this year. We like to introduce logic, maybe rhetoric. Our children have done some speech classes in the past and debate. Those are really beneficial to this age. Really thrive to get that kind of interaction amongst their peers and have an opportunity to discuss their thoughts about the world and what's going on in their mind with their peers as well. And we really want to encourage that as long as it's from like a good, godly Christian perspective. We definitely introduce those subjects. But most of the other subjects are pretty similar to what they were in the previous forms. They're just becoming more advanced now, more requirements of time and interaction with the content that happens during these forms. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining me once again on my video, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.